According to the Project Management Institute, it's been found that most projects experience a communication breakdown of some kind, even though project managers spend about 90% of their time working on communication alone. It's in a project manager's best interest to communicate tactfully, not only with the members of their own organization, but also with customers and vendors. When done well, strategic communication with a customer or client can instill a sense of confidence that you're doing a good job and that you're a trustworthy partner. So how should a project manager approach communication with a customer? Using soft skills like negotiation, empathetic listening, and trust building will help foster a good relationship between you and your customers, and a good project manager knows how and when to apply these skills. A key practice for negotiation, empathetic listening, and trust building is asking questions. It's important to ask open-ended questions and actively listen to understand the customer's current state versus their desired state, and what might help them get from here to there. If you ask open-ended questions, you'll find out where you can make your customers feel more secure. You'll be able to negotiate to ensure both of your needs are met, and you'll build the necessary trust to have a successful partnership. High-performing project managers set clear expectations about when they'll communicate certain things to their customers. For example, you might want to set an expectation that you'll provide weekly progress updates to keep clients informed, rather than expecting them to come to you with questions. When troubleshooting an issue with the product, it might not be necessary to fill the customer in on an issue that won't affect the outcome. Let's say a designer on your team quit, and you had to replace them. You may be able to replace that designer with a new one fairly quickly and not even skip a beat in your project's progress. You can complete the task at hand without giving the customer any additional worry. The level of visibility between customers and clients on a given project may vary, and you'll have to use your judgment regarding what's important to communicate to your client. Sometimes you'll want to tell your client if there's an issue. If you reach a point in the project where you can't possibly move forward without their help and input, you'll have to communicate the issue to them calmly and with empathy. Let's put this into Project PlantPlow's context, where we're troubleshooting an issue with broken planters. Maybe, when we were putting together our quality standards, we left some room for supplier error and accounted for some broken planters. We'll say we figured an acceptable number of broken planters was 2 out of every 50. But let's imagine that the customer received a shipment and there were 5 broken planters. At that point, we'll need to meet with the customer and ask important negotiation questions. We'll need to decide if the 5 broken planters out of every 50 is an acceptable outcome, or we'll need to discuss whether the customer would consider investing in a higher tier of planters that may be less prone to breaking. Presenting a solution, like using sturdier planters, will affect their budget, and they'll need to adjust accordingly. Is the customer okay with that change? Would that lead to another trade-off? Keeping in mind that the main goal here is customer satisfaction throughout the negotiation process, you'll want to be considerate of their feelings and limitations. You can do this by exhibiting empathy, understanding their frustrations, addressing them, and finding a solution that's beneficial for both of you. You may have held a customer-facing role in the past, whether that's in a call center, as a retail associate, as a server in a restaurant, or any number of positions. Even if you haven't, you've probably been an advocate for yourself while conversing with a customer service representative. Because of this, you'll probably have a good idea of what good customer service looks like. Good customer service results in choosing to go back to the same hair salon, bakery, or coffee shop because you like the way that you're treated and the service you received, even if you had an issue, versus choosing not to go back to those places if you don't receive that level of care. Your past experiences have taught you to manage relationships and to avoid delivering something that's low quality. It doesn't feel great when you're on the receiving end. In order to yield better results in future projects, it's necessary to get feedback from customers. Sometimes this feedback will come during the process, and sometimes it'll come after the project is completed, depending on how you map it out in the initiation phase. The matter of when you receive feedback may come down to what you actually want to accomplish in your project. If your business is launching an e-commerce site, you will want user feedback so you can make adjustments to optimize the customer's shopping experience. If your business is an on-demand cookie delivery service, you may want to deliver the cookies and then get their user feedback to know how your customers felt about the cookies and the delivery experience as a whole. User feedback helps to close any gaps in understanding between the customer's expectation and the project's needs. So to summarize very briefly, soft skills like negotiation, empathetic listening, and trust building will help create a good relationship between you and your customers. And getting feedback from those customers will help you to iterate on a product or service. As promised, we're going to discuss user testing and feedback. If the end goal of our project is to have a great quality product or service for both our own organization and our customer, we need to get an idea of what the customer wants. We already learned how to make sure something is high quality on our end. Now let's find out how to measure what clients want so we can meet their needs, expectations, and standards. The best way to get an idea of what customers and users want is to ask them, but we don't mean calling each of them up on the phone and literally asking them. That might not be the best use of our time. Fortunately, there are a few ways we can streamline that information. We can conduct a series of surveys or tests with customers and users. Some common ones are feedback surveys and user acceptance tests. Let's start with feedback surveys. Feedback surveys are a survey in which users provide feedback on features of your product that they like or dislike. These surveys can take place as you design, before you launch, in order to find out if people like and understand the product, or after you've launched if you want to make sure the user experience is even more satisfying. So your users participate in a survey and give you feedback on what features they like or dislike, and potentially which aspects they find to be fairly intuitive and which aspects are a little tougher to navigate. After you get that feedback, you'll either be good to launch, if you haven't yet, or you'll go back and iterate on the product if it's already on the market. Alternatively, you might conduct user acceptance tests. In broader terms, a user acceptance test, or a UAT, is a test that helps a business make sure that a product or solution works for its users. A UAT must meet the agreed upon requirements and deliver the expected results. This test is typically used to assess the end-to-end experience for the user of a new process or product. A user acceptance test is incredibly important because it takes place near the end of a product's development and therefore is an overall user experience test of the entire product, software, or service. UATs are sometimes referred to as beta tests. Let's find out what a user acceptance test agenda might look like. In a typical UAT setting, you'll welcome your users and thank them for participating. Then, you'll present the product to them. This includes discussing testing guidelines and demonstrating how the product works. Next, you'll start your UAT test cases, taking your audience through critical user journeys. A critical user journey is the sequence of steps a user follows to accomplish tasks in your product. When presenting something you've built, you must give users a visual representation or mock-up of your product or have them go through a demo. For example, if you're working on a construction-based project and you intend to replace all appliances and hardware in the home, you'll want to give the user some sort of vision of what that might entail. This could include 3D models, digital blueprints, samples, and more. Your UAT demo should focus on a call to action. For instance, the call to action for your project may be the need to test hardware in the client's future home. Maybe the homeowners have requested a dishwasher that can be opened and closed with very little force and doesn't make too much noise. In that case, you'll want to give the client real-life scenarios to work within. Ask them to load the dishes and start the wash cycle. Then ask questions like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much force was required to open and close the dishwasher to determine if the washer meets their expectations? During your presentation and walkthrough of the UAT, you should be collecting feedback from the users on their overall experience. During this part of testing, your users will be able to help you identify edge cases. Edge cases are rare outliers that the original requirements didn't account for. They deal with the extreme maximums and minimums of parameters. For example, imagine that you created an app that allows for unlimited photo uploads, knowing that users will rarely upload more than 1,000 photos in a single session. How will the system deal with someone who actually does upload thousands of photos, or millions, in a single upload? It's unlikely, but it could be disastrous for your software. After identifying edge cases, the last step of the UAT agenda is to recap your findings, identify bugs or issues, and prioritize which issues need to be addressed first. When you've addressed the issue and determined next steps, you'll be able to close and conclude your user acceptance testing. And there you have it. So we've learned a bit more about the importance of listening to feedback from customers, and discussed some common methods for measuring customer satisfaction like feedback surveys, user acceptance tests, and edge cases. That's a lot to learn. Keep it up. You're doing great so far.